Welcome to Podcast Summaries, where every week we break down powerful ideas from 8 to 10 top podcasts to help you grow, heal, and thrive while saving time. If you find this summary helpful, please subscribe and check out links for more content. Your support keeps this journey going. Here is summarized version of Nischa Shah, They're Lying to You About Buying a House, My 652,510 Rule, Built 200K Passive Income, featuring Nischa Shah by Steven Bartlett. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about her mission and what she's trying to do with her content. Nischa Shah explains that her goal is to take complicated financial jargon and turn it into easy, practical, and actionable money tips that anyone can understand. She wants to help people break free from crippling debt and build lasting wealth. Nischa Shah shares that the principles of money stay the same regardless of how much you earn. She believes that her mission is to help make money more accessible, and the underlying thinking and mindset can be applied whether you're making $50,000 or $500,000. Steven Bartlett notes that people don't really learn about money in school, and Nischa Shah agrees, saying that it's becoming harder and harder to save money because everything is trying to pull you away from your money. Nischa Shah shares her personal story of how she used to follow society's version of money, buying things to make her look better and living a certain lifestyle. However, she realized that if she continued living this way, she wouldn't have the freedom and choices she wanted. She felt trapped and didn't know how to escape. Nischa Shah explains that she had a catalyst moment when her mentor lost her job, and she realized that she needed to take control of her finances. She shifted learning about money, saving, and investing, and eventually shifted her YouTube channel. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the Ostrich effect, where people avoid looking at negative financial information because of fear. Nischa Shah explains that this is a cognitive bias that keeps people stuck and unaware of their financial situation. She advises that the first step in taking back control is to build a peace of mind fund, which is not about math, but about psychology. She explains that people should calculate their core living expenses for 1 month and save that amount. Nischa Shah shares that saving 1 month's expenses puts you ahead of 59% of Americans and 30% of people in the UK diet. She notes that people should not invest this money, but rather keep it as a safety net for unexpected expenses. Steven Bartlett asks about Step 2, and Nischa Shah explains that it's about cutting the financial bleeding by paying off high-interest debt. She advises people to rank their debt from highest to lowest interest rate and make minimum payments on everything except the highest interest debt. Nischa Shah explains that credit cards can be good if used in the right way, but people should only use them if they can pay them off in full every month. She notes that people should not use credit cards for things that don't make them money, such as buying luxury items. Steven Bartlett asks about Step 3, and Nischa Shah explains that it's about building an emergency buffer, which is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. She notes that this provides peace of mind and security, and that research has shown that saving 3 to 6 months of living expenses does more for emotional well-being than earning over $200,000. Nischa Shah explains that people should not oversave, but rather know when to stop saving and start investing. She advises that people should start investing after they've saved 3 to 6 months of their living expenses. She notes that if people start investing before they've got their savings set aside, they may have to pull their money out at a loss or go into debt if the market goes down. Steven Bartlett asks about Step 4, and Nischa Shah explains that it's about investing. She notes that people should invest in a way that makes sense for their financial goals and risk tolerance. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the phrase, save for retirement. Nischa Shah responds that saving for retirement is not enough, and that investing is necessary due to the rising cost of living and inflation. She explains that there are 2 main ways to invest: through an employer-sponsored retirement account and through an individual tax-advantaged account. Nischa Shah emphasizes the importance of starting to invest early, as time is a powerful lever in investing. She notes that many people know they should be investing, but put it off until later, missing out on the benefits of compound interest. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah to explain the 2 investment avenues in more detail. She describes the employer-sponsored retirement account, where the employer invests on behalf of the employee, and the individual tax-advantaged account, where the individual invests their own money after tax. Nischa Shah explains that the employer-sponsored account has a cap on how much the employer will match, and that it's essential to contribute enough to meet that match. She also notes that the money in this account is for retirement and can't be withdrawn until then. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about people who say they want to live in the moment and enjoy their money now, rather than saving for retirement. Nischa Shah responds that it's essential to understand what's most important to each individual and make financial decisions that align with those values. She shares a personal anecdote about two colleagues, one who prioritized material possessions and the other who valued freedom and choice. Nischa Shah emphasizes that true happiness often comes from having freedom, choice, and time, rather than just accumulating wealth. She notes that people who prioritize material possessions may be on a hedonic treadmill, constantly seeking the next thing to make them happy. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the second investment strategy, which is investing in an individual tax-advantaged account. She explains that this account allows individuals to invest their own money after tax, and the money grows tax-free over time. She explains that index funds invest in a diversified portfolio of companies, reducing risk and increasing potential returns. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the performance of investing in the S&P 500, and she notes that historically, the long-term average return has been around 8–10% per year. However, she emphasizes that this is not a guarantee, and that investing always carries some level of risk. Nischa Shah advises that if someone has a lump sum to invest, they should consider putting a small amount into an investment account to get shifted and build the habit of investing. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about how to increase income, and she suggests asking for a pay rise or switching jobs. Nischa Shah shares her personal experience of asking for pay rises and notes that women are often less likely to ask for pay rises and may face biases when they do. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about her thoughts on buying a house as a good investment. He notes that it's often the first thing people do when they get some money, and it's part of the script of life. Nischa Shah responds by sharing her personal experience and how her view of buying a house was shaped by her parents' experiences as immigrants. She explains that for her parents, buying a house represented wealth, stability, and security. However, she also notes that this view is not necessarily applicable to everyone, and that there are other ways to build wealth that don't involve buying a house. Nischa Shah explains that the idea of buying a house as a forced mechanism of saving is a big factor in why people think it's a good investment. However, she also notes that if you save the money and invest it, you might be better off financially. She shares her own experience of buying a property in North London, which has only gone up in value by about 10% over 8 years. In contrast, the stock market has provided a much higher return on investment. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the psychological aspect of paying rent versus buying a house. Nischa Shah agrees that there is a psychological comfort in knowing that you have a place that belongs to you, and that you can't be served notice by a landlord. However, she also notes that this comfort comes at a cost, and that there are other ways to build wealth that don't involve buying a house. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the concept of opportunity cost, which his brother, an investment banker, always talks to him about. She notes that people often don't think about life in terms of opportunity costs, and that there's always a trade-off between what you can see and what you can't see. Steven Bartlett shares an example of opportunity costs where he spent $100 on lunch for his team, which could have been invested in the S&P 500 and potentially earned a much higher return. Nischa Shah notes that this is a good example of how opportunity cost works, and that it's not just about the numbers, but also about the behavioral concepts and how you feel when it comes to investing. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about how people should allocate their investments, and whether they should split their investments into different categories of risk. Nischa Shah notes that it's not just about the returns, but also about the behavioral concepts and how you feel when it comes to investing. She shares a study by Fidelity that found that people who invested in funds underperformed the fund that they were in, because they let fear and anxiety drive their investment decisions. Nischa Shah notes that the best performing group of investors were dead people, because they didn't touch their investment accounts. She also notes that the second best performing group were people who forgot that they had a fund in the first place. She advises people to invest in something that makes them buy and hold, and to understand that it's not just about the returns, but also about the behavioral concepts and how you feel when it comes to investing. Nischa Shah notes that this is a great example of how taking the emotions out of the equation can lead to better investment decisions. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about her investment strategy and portfolio. Nischa Shah explains that her portfolio is diversified, with 40% in index funds, including the S&P 500 and international market. She also invests in target-date retirement funds, which automatically rebalance to become more conservative as she approaches retirement. Additionally, she allocates 30% to real estate in the UK, 25% to her business, and the remaining 5% to crypto and cash reserves. Nischa Shah emphasizes the importance of investing in oneself, citing the need to increase income, skills, and value. She believes that investing in oneself has a knock-on effect on other investments. She suggests Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which focuses on money mindset, and The Richest Man in Babylon, which intertwines a novel with financial literacy concepts. Nischa Shah discusses the importance of understanding one's reference point, which is knowing where one's finances break down and what buckets they fall into. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about her views on buying a car. She advises buying a 3 to 5-year-old car, as it has depreciated enough and won't depreciate as much during the time of ownership. She also suggests considering leasing if one wants a new car every few years. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about tracking money and suggests using a budget tracker. Nischa Shah discusses the importance of having open and transparent conversations about money with one's partner. She emphasizes that money is just a symbol for what one values, and that understanding each other's values is key to creating a financial life together. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about merging finances with a partner. Steven Bartlett inquires about prenuptial agreements, and Nischa Shah explains that everyone has a prenup, whether they know it or not. She notes that prenups can be customized or follow the state's guidelines, but they may not be fully legally binding in some areas. The conversation shifts to the topic of passive income, and Nischa Shah defines it as money that doesn't require work or time to earn. She emphasizes that many people misunderstand passive income, thinking it requires little to no effort, when in fact, it often requires significant upfront work. Steven Bartlett shares an example of someone who made £4,000 in 30 days by selling digital products on a platform he co-owns. Nischa Shah agrees that this is a viable opportunity for people to monetize their expertise and skills. Nischa Shah shares her own journey of creating a business from her finance knowledge, which shifted as a creative outlet and eventually grew into a full-time career. She emphasizes the importance of finding meaning and purpose in one's work, which has brought her immense happiness. The conversation touches on the topic of time management, and Nischa Shah stresses the importance of budgeting time effectively to achieve long-term goals. She notes that people often live in autopilot mode, wasting time on activities that don't bring them closer to their desired life. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about her thoughts on credit scores and how much she thinks about them. Nischa Shah responds by saying that credit scores are crucial, especially when it comes to making big purchases like cars or houses. She explains that two people can walk into a car showroom and choose the same car, but the amount they pay for it will be different based on their credit history. She emphasizes the importance of paying off credit cards on time and in full, and checking one's credit rating online for free to ensure all details are correct. Nischa Shah then shares her advice for 3 different personas at various stages of life. For Andy, who is just starting his career, she emphasizes the importance of saving and investing early, harnessing the power of long-term growth, and being mindful of the trade-offs for every decision he makes. She suggests that Andy's risk appetite should be higher in his 20s, as he has time to play the long-term game and can bounce back from any mistakes. For Lisa, who has a mortgage and a good amount of savings, Nischa Shah advises her to have an emergency fund in place, pay off any debt, and start investing in a simple and long-term manner. For Matt, a single parent earning $60,000 a year, Nischa Shah suggests paying off high-interest debt first, increasing income sources, and exploring immediate income streams such as selling second-hand items online or renting out a spare room on Airbnb. She emphasizes the importance of finding ways to increase income without putting in more time, given Matt's responsibilities as a single parent. Nischa Shah also shares her thoughts on the importance of eliminating decision-making and creating systems to simplify life. She explains that she wears black a lot, not just because it's her favorite color, but also because it helps her avoid decision fatigue and focus on more important things. Finally, Nischa Shah is asked to leave a question for the next guest, and she shares a heartfelt story about how her dad's encouragement and support helped her continue creating content on YouTube, even when she faced criticism and doubt. She expresses her gratitude to her dad for believing in her and inspiring her to keep going. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the person responsible for who she is today, and she credits her dad, who wanted her to have a secure job. However, Nischa Shah's decision to quit her high-paying job in banking and take an 84% pay cut was a difficult one for her dad to accept. She reveals that she was on a salary of £220,000, equivalent to around $300,000, and was about to receive a six-figure bonus when she resigned. Nischa Shah explains that she didn't just wait for the bonus because she knew that there would always be a carrot waved in front of her, distracting her from her true goals. She had to take a step back, run her numbers, and realize that the biggest risk wasn't quitting her job, but letting her once-in-a-lifetime opportunity pass her by. She also had to let go of the identity she had wrapped herself in, which was tied to her title and corporate career. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the external voices that were telling her to stay in her job, and she reveals that people were mocking her for sharing her numbers online and questioning her decision to leave banking. However, she reminds herself that her goal is to help people make informed decisions about their money, and that transparency is key. Nischa Shah gets emotional as she talks about the pain she felt during her career and the guilt she felt for quitting her job. She reveals that she didn't tell her parents about her decision until after she had quit because she knew they would try to convince her to stay. She also talks about the importance of listening to her inner voice and not letting external noise dictate her decisions. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah about the hardest day during her transition, and she reveals that it was the morning she emailed her manager to turn down the bonus and leave banking. He asks her to describe what he would have seen if he were a fly on the wall that day, and she paints a picture of a young woman taking a leap of faith and pursuing her passion, despite the uncertainty and risk involved. Steven Bartlett asks Nischa Shah if being a first- or second-generation immigrant played a role in her decision to pursue a traditional career path, and she reveals that she felt pressure from her parents to succeed and provide for her family. However, she also felt guilty for wanting to pursue a different path and potentially disappointing her parents. Steven Bartlett shares a study by Broniware, a palliative nurse who interviewed people on their deathbeds, and reveals that the number one regret is not living the life they could have lived. He encourages Nischa Shah to share her thoughts on this, and she emphasizes the importance of taking risks and pursuing one's passions, even if it means going against societal expectations. Steven Bartlett thanks Nischa Shah for sharing her story and encourages his listeners to check out her channel and social media profiles. He also asks his listeners to subscribe to his show and support him in creating more content. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, check out YouTube channel, and just remember, subscription is only £1 or $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening.